Hi, today we are going to talk about working with objects. In this lesson, we continue with adding text and images, but we're also going to learn to make modifications to existing objects. This is going to be a longer lesson and it is full of a lot of important information, so just make sure you allow yourself plenty of time to read and work the steps in the book in order to complete the hands-on lesson. Layers in InDesign, though similar in some aspects, are a little different than what you're used to in Photoshop, where each object or each type layer is on its own layer. In InDesign, a layer is considered more like a level. Okay, you're going to notice that we usually put all text on a text layer, all graphics on a graphics layer, and so on. So we're going to go to File and Open, navigate to our lesson files. We need to open up 04 underscore start, and I'm going to go ahead and open the in file with it. Give that just a second. I am going to go ahead and update modified links. Okay. So basically what we have with this particular lesson is we have a 4-page newsletter. Okay. We take a very quick look at the pages panel. This is page 4, this is page 1 on a spread. And then we have spread pages 2 and 3. Okay. This is the front cover of the newsletter. This is actually the back cover of the newsletter. I know that seems a little weird looking at it that way, but if this paper were to fold, what's on the left would actually appear on the back. Okay. So that's why it is specifically set up this way. If we take a look at our start file, you can see exactly what we're going to be doing in this lesson. We're going to be finishing this side over here, making some modifications here and here, adding a graphic, taking Urban Oasis Garden Spring 2024 and formatting it here. There's going to be a graphic in here. This text box, we're actually going to resize that into a shape, which is something we have not had the opportunity to do before. This page, we're working specifically with the Align panel to align these icons into position. One of each of them will appear above the class schedule and be rotated. And then if we take a look at our pasteboard, we actually have a path over here that's already been created for us. All right, and when I select it, our contextual taskbar is telling us that it is like a text to image. So we're going to put text on a path, okay? So that will be finished over here. And then on this side, there's going to be an image we will text wrap. There will be images in a line repeated here. And then this portion on planting your garden will have a white fill. So I'm just going to leave the end file open as we move along with the lecture video so we can just kind of go back and take a look if we need to. I'm going to go ahead and save as. Navigate to my files for lesson 4 and change this to 04 underscore. Well, kind of helps if I can type. Objects. And then I'm going to save that. Okay, we are good to go. 04 underscore objects. Introducing layers. Placing objects on different layers lets you organize them for easy selection and editing. Think of layers as transparent sheets stacked on top of each other, and each layer contains its own set of objects. The order displayed in the Layers panel is the stacking order in the file. Every new InDesign document contains one layer, and that would be layer 1, and then you can rename that layer. You can also add layers, delete, select, display layers via the Layers panel. Okay, so I do want you guys to notice the layers illustration that is included in this section of the text, because it's great because it actually shows you like the layers of the clear transparent sheets, um, and it kind of breaks that down. So you'll be able to take a look at that of what they have for you as a screenshot in the book. Working with layers. When you select a layer in the Layers panel, you're going to see a pin icon appear to the right of the layer name. This pin icon indicates that the selected layer is the target layer or the current drawing layer, and anything you import or create will be placed on that layer. You will also see a small square appear next to the selected layer name. This indicates that the selected objects belong on that layer. You can move objects from one layer to another by dragging that little square between layers in the Layers panel. Each layer in the Layers panel is assigned its own color. Objects on that specific layer will reflect its layer color when it's selected. For example, if the text layer is blue, the text object on the text layer, when selected, will have a blue border around it. When you select content in a frame, you will notice a donut shape called a content grabber. I probably last mentioned the content grabber. That's probably been 2 lessons ago when we covered getting to know InDesign. But that little donut shape, that is the content grabber, and that helps you to move content within the frame. And it is especially helpful when you need to reposition an image inside its graphics frame, because remember, the image and the graphics frame, those are separate objects. We can use the arrange command, and our arrange command is up here on our menu bar under object and arrange. There's bring to front, bring forward, send backward, and send to back. Okay, and this moves items up or down a level on a layer in the Layers panel, or you can think of it as moving it in front of or behind of another element, okay, in the document. All right, so in the last lesson, I did talk to you guys about using the arrange command on setting up a document and working with pages. When I inserted the snippet at the top, and I actually had to highlight the snippet after I had placed it, and then I had to move it backwards, okay, or move it to back, because it had actually covered the 2 text boxes at the top left and the top right that had the page numbers. Okay, so I just moved the snippet back one so then we could see those text boxes with those page numbers. So they're talking about certain things that fortunately we've already had the opportunity to get a look at in other lessons. They talk again in this lesson about the bleed guides, and that's actually where we left off at the end of the last lesson. Okay, so if we take a look at our bleed guides here, we can see that it came in with our lesson file that our bleed guide is set up. We can clearly see that on the outer perimeter of our document setup. And then you can also see that the solid color background and even the image, okay, is actually going off of the page to the bleed guide. So if we just take a quick look at all 4 of these pages, you can see where that's at. And then if I click to look at preview, that'll show you what that would look like trimmed and printed. So it's got a nice clean edge to it. And looking in preview mode, you'd never know we had bleed guide set up. Okay. I want to look at the layers panel here for just a second. Okay. If I expand the layers panel, we have 2 layers in there. Okay, these are the 2 layers that came in with our lesson file. We have a text layer that is currently blue. They are going to have, I think you change that to an orange color, and I will show you how to do that. Then we have a graphics layer that is a dark green. Okay, now what they were talking about with the little pin icon, okay, right now I have the graphics layer selected. So the little pin icon is on the graphics layer. This is basically telling us that this is the current drawing layer, okay? Or the little pin can also be referred to as the target layer. All right, anything that you create or place or import or whatever layer is selected and you see the little pin icon, that's the layer that it will be placed on. So if I were to place a snippet or use my type tool to draw something like draw a text box, it would actually appear on the graphics layer. Okay, now if I expand these so that you can see what's on these layers, okay, these are the stacking order, right? The stacking order of both of these layers. If I select the Botanical Gardens Worldwide, okay, for example, I know that this is on the text layer because the bounding box is blue and we can see that this blue matches the text color. Okay, the text layer is selected. I have my target layer, okay, is right here. In addition to this little square, all right, the little small square that appears next to the selected layer name, this tells me that this object belongs to this, okay? And if by chance this needs to be moved, what you would do to move it is take your mouse and just hold your left mouse button down and drag it to the right layer and release. When I do that, if you can see it, it's now dark green. My bounding box is dark green as well as this right here. Okay, so that's how you can very easily move objects from one layer to another in the layers panel. Now I am going to Control Z that and put that back because that's a text layer and I need to leave that put. All right. Going to collapse these just real quickly. Okay, now in the layers panel, you can do two things. You can create a new layer. You can also delete a selected layer. All right, from the panel options button in the layers panel, you can do a lot more. So I just wanted to show you that you can create a new layer and you can also delete a layer, but there's also additional things that you can do from your panel options button. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click to create a new layer, and then I'm going to double click that open, and it automatically gives it layer 3, and I'm going to name this background. And they do want us to change this to this green color, and I'm going to click OK, and I'm just going to move this to the bottom. Okay, now here's the thing. What they're going to have us do is we are going to select all of the backgrounds and we are going to move them into our background layer, okay, which makes sense. So this colored background right here, if I locate it, is actually in a rectangle in the text layer. So I'm going to, you can see the little square is filled blue, and I am going to just do a drag and drag this into my background. Over on this side, on page 1, I'm finding my garden covered JPEG is also on my text layer. So I'm going to drag it and put it in my background. I'm going to find my layer on spread pages 2 and 3 and do the exact same thing. So this blue colored background is on a rectangle, and I'm going to do a drag and I'm going to pull it down. And I'm going to find this very pale grayish white color rectangle, and I'm going to move it. Very easy to do. All right, after all of my 4 backgrounds are safely in my background layer, I'm just going to go ahead and lock that layer so that way as we're working, none of that gets moved around. Now there's an easy way to change a layer color. All you have to do is just double click it open, and then right here under color is light blue, and I think they're going to have us change that to orange. Right, I'm going to go ahead and do a Control S and save. Creating and modifying text frames. Text frames are created with the type tool, and that is T on our keyboard, as you know. and can be modified using a variety of tools, such as the selection tool, and that keyboard shortcut is V. When working with text frames, you will see the presence of overset text, as noted by a red plus sign in the output. Overset text is not all visible because the frame is too small to display it all. You can fix it by changing the size and shape of the text frame, reducing the font size, or flowing the remaining text into another text frame. So I can tell you right off the bat that we have two pre-flight errors, and they are right here. Overset text here and overset text here. Both of these we will fix in the lesson, and you should not have overset text issues or pre-flight issues when you're completely done with the lesson. Okay, I do want to explain to you guys that this is a very, I would say more kind of just, it's not hard, it's just kind of a longer lesson. And lecture video for the previous lesson was like an hour and 18 minutes. So that one, I definitely needed to try to work a lot of that lesson, especially because the screenshots just, in my opinion, weren't very helpful. Okay, so for this particular lesson, I'm only going to cover a certain amount of sections in the lesson. So if you're watching the lecture video, please make sure you pause it and revert back to the book to see where I've left off, because I'm not covering this entire lesson. Okay, so I'm only going to cover the sections that you hear me cover and that I show you. So please make sure that you're pausing if you're following along with me, and that you're making sure that you're reading and doing all of the steps in the book so that when you are completely done, yours will match the end file. Okay, mine won't. I'm only going to be doing a select number of things here today for the video. I'm going to get my type tool, and we're going to do some creating and modifying of these text frames. All right, so I'm over here on page 4. I have my type tool selected. I do want to make sure that I am on my text layer, and I am. And again, if you accidentally are on the wrong layer when you do this, remember it's very easy to move from one layer to another. It's not a big deal. And I am going to click and create a text box that's only about 2 columns wide. Okay, get my type tool again. And they are going to have us type in there featured, and I'm going to do a shift enter blossoms. Now, our paragraph styles panel actually has quite a few paragraph styles that came in with our lesson file that they've already created and saved for us, which is fantastic. We just need to scroll down and find the right flush title. Here we are, and apply that. How cool is that? It automatically right aligned and formatted featured blossoms for us. So if I get my selection tool, I can actually double click this little bounding box right here in the center, the middle. If I just double click that, it resizes the text box for me. All right, so I don't even have to resize it. I can just double click and it does it on its own. Going to scroll on over here so we can take a look at the next thing. Okay, so back to this Botanical Gardens Worldwide. I'd used that as an example earlier. We do have overset text. So with my selection tool, I am going to just basically scroll down just enough to where we don't have overset text anymore. So your rulers should be showing, and I'm probably just going to scroll down to about 8.5 inches and see if that should do it. That should give us plenty of room. Yes, it does. We no longer have overset text. Okay, so now we're only down to 1 error in our pre-flight panel. All right, so you want to make sure that I still have my selection tool. I'm going to deselect. I'm just going to click off. I don't want anything selected. Okay, now I'm going to come over here and get my direct selection tool, which is the white arrow, and it is A on your keyboard. And then I want you to come over here and select the text box again. I don't care what the book says, I want you to do it this way. Okay, I want you to have nothing selected, grab your direct selection tool, and then click the text box. And I'll tell you why. Because you want to make sure that these little squares right here are hollow. All right, it's not going to work unless they're hollow. What you're going to do is you're going to hold your left mouse button down on this center one here in the middle at the bottom, and you're going to drag up until you are about 7.5 inches on the Y. Okay, now the reason that is important to have hollow filled little squares is because when you use your direct selection tool, we are actually working with points. All right, so think pen tool. Okay, and that is really important. So to be able to manipulate a point, you need a hollow little square, not a filled little square, a hollow one. So that's why I want you guys to deselect, grab your direct selection tool, okay, the white arrow, and then click, and then go to the middle center little square, and then click that, hold your left mouse button, and drag that thing up to about 7.5 inches up, okay? That is actually really important because working with points can be a little tricky. Now, over here in your tools panel, it's in with your pen tool, okay? So if you can find your pen tool, that is P on your keyboard, but if you can find your pen tool, it's actually housed in there. It's the Convert Direction Point tool, okay, if that's not a mouthful. And that's what it looks like. You want this tool right here, and you want to go back to the tool or go back to the point that you just worked with, and you want to click, hold your left mouse button, and kind of drag out slanted wise, just like this. Okay, I know it kind of looks a little funny, but just stay with me here. Then we're going to go back out here to our direct selection tool, and we're going to grab that same center bottom point, and we're going to drag it down, okay, until we no longer have overset text. And then we can manipulate this until we get this to where it's still kind of has a nice look to it. Do you see how it's kind of curved? I'm happy with that. So I'm going to click off of it, and you can see how it's kind of got that nice little curvature to it. I'm going to do a Control S, and I'm going to save. I'm going to go back over here to page 4. And I'm going to use my selection tool, which is the black arrow, and I need to select this text box that has the name of the flowers in it that you see on the screen. And I'm going to do a Control B, that'd be Command B if you were on a Mac. All right, this opens the text frame options dialog box. Now I'm going to make sure that my preview has a check mark in it, and I'm going to change the number of my columns to 3. So you're going to see how this is kind of reflowing the text behind it into 3 columns. Okay, I'm leaving my gutter the same. I'm not going to change it. So it should still be 0.125 inches. And then I'm going to click OK. Now what they're going to have us do, we need to force foxglove up into the next column and this one up into the next column. So we're going to end up having 3 columns and 2 rows of flower explanations. Okay, so I'm going to use my type tool and put my cursor right here in front of foxglove. Now you can go up into type. There's a couple of ways to do this, and insert break character and do a column break. All it's doing is just forcing it into the next column. You can put your cursor in front of the C And instead of going up into type, remember in a previous lesson, I said, hey, you can also right click. You can do the same thing here. And then you can do a second column break. So now you have the 3 columns and then it looks like 2 rows. And I'm going to let you guys finish that section there. When you get to this portion in the lesson, there is another little section that is on using smart guides. Just make sure you guys peruse over that when you get to that point. Creating and modifying graphics frames. When you are working with graphics, it is important to remember that the frame is separate from the actual image. So when you need to modify, you make sure you have the right one. Okay, that is a point I drive home repetitively. The image, when selected, will have a brown bounding box. The graphics frame will have whatever color of layer that it is on. Now, if you have placed an image into an existing frame and that frame is not big enough to fit the picture, if you start dragging this center white handle of the graphics frame and then you pause just after, you'll begin to see like a cropped kind of invisible portion of the image. That feature is called dynamic preview, and it helps you to easily determine when the frame edge is beyond the edge of the image. Okay, so you can think of it this way. You have an 8x10 image sitting behind a 5x7 frame. So dynamic preview is going to allow you to see the whole 8x10 picture. Now, there's going to be a little yellow handle on a graphics frame, and that's actually going to allow you to put corner options onto your frame. So you don't just have to have square frames, you can actually create a shape out of it. You can also reveal the cropped invisible portion of an image by going to Object up on your menu bar at the top and Fitting. And then you can do Fit Frame to Content. But I also want you to see that you can fit content to frame. So you've got options. And if you just take a quick look, you can fill the frame proportionately or fit content proportionately. But these are probably the more commonly used ones, okay, depending on what you need. You can also place a graphic at 100% of its original size instead of placing it into an existing graphics frame. In addition, with a loaded graphics icon, you can drag to create the size of frame that you need. And when you release that mouse button, it will place the image inside the frame at that exact size. No resizing is needed. So that's pretty cool. I'm going to come up here to the top and I'm going to make sure I am deselected. Okay, I'm just going to kind of click out here. Let me view my page in the window so that you can see. Okay, I'm going to go to File and Place. Okay, not File and Open, File and Place. And in Lesson 4, there is a links folder. And in that links folder, there's some images that we're going to need. Okay, specifically for this section in the text, we need these images that are labeled 01 to 06. So if you select 01 rows and then shift click 06 calla lily, it will get all of them in order. And I'm going to click open. Again, you want to make sure nothing is selected when you do this. You get the loaded graphics icon, and that is what it looks like. Okay, so it shows you the little graphic image in like grayscale, and then it gives you the big thumbnail of the first image, and then it shows in parentheses in white and blue that you have 6 images preloaded, if you will. What I am going to do is that I'm actually going to drag with my loaded graphics icon, but here's the kicker. I'm actually going to use my arrow keys to create a 3-column by 2-row spots, if you will, to put these pictures. Okay, let me show you. You're probably like, what are you talking about? Let me show you what I mean. All right, so watch what I'm doing. I'm going to just basically draw down in here to fill this space. And when I do that, I'm going to press my arrow key up 1 time, and my right arrow key, I'm going to press it twice. Okay, so what it's going to do is it's going to create a grid. Okay, so I'm going to start dragging first, and I'm going to drag, and as I drag down, notice there's just 1 grid. So I am going to press my arrow key up one time. And when I did that, it created 2 rows. Now, if I do my right arrow key once, there is 4 grids. If I do it one more time, there is 6. So this actually gives me 6 places to put pictures, and that's a 3 by 3 grid. Okay, so I'm just gonna leave a little space here, and when I release my mouse, it places the images. I know the images look a little funky, but you will have the opportunity to resize these images to fit the frame. Okay, just like I had mentioned earlier, like fit content to frame. All right, so you'll have that ability to do that, and then you'll be able to put in metadata. And we're going to talk about metadata right now. Adjusting the space between frames. The gap tool, and that is U on your keyboard. That's your keyboard shortcut for it. That lets you select and adjust the space between frames. So this is the area right here. Okay, don't confuse that with gutter. All right, gutter is the area between your columns. Your gap tool is going to adjust the area in between your frames. Similar concept, different terminology. One's for your columns and one's actually for your frames. Okay, so your gap tool adjusts the space in between. Moving on to adding metadata captions to graphics frames. InDesign lets you create 2 things. You can do static captions, and static captions generate caption text from an image's metadata, but it doesn't actually link to that metadata. Or you can create live captions, which are variables that retain links to the image's metadata and can be automatically updated if the metadata changes. So static is not linked, so it puts it in, and then if the metadata changes, it does not update. Live captions, it does. So if the metadata changes, of course, live captions will also be updated. Wrapping text around a graphic. The text wrap dialog box is used to wrap text around 1, the rectangle bounding box of any object, 2, around objects of any shape, and 3, around the contours of imported images. I'm going to slide over here to page 1. With my selection tool, I want to make sure that I get this picture selected. All right. All right, so I clicked it, and if you notice here, it's got the bounding box on it, okay? So I need to make sure that I'm getting the right one. All right, so if we open up our layers panel, okay, it's actually I want to make sure I've got it right. It's the bleeding heart. It's going to be right here. So I'm going to go ahead and select this and do an edit and copy. Going to come down into page 3 and do an edit and paste. Move this up into position. Oops. Goodness gracious. Got to make sure you're getting the right one. All right, and while I have it here, I'm just going to go ahead and expand this to make it just a little bit larger. And notice when I did that, it looks like the branch that it's hanging off of, you can actually see all of it now. And I'm going to move this and just make this. Now you can move this around after you do it. I'm just trying to get it where it needs to go. I think that's pretty good. All right, so I'm going to select this. And then if your text wrap's not open, you can open that. But my text wrap is located over here in my docked panels. And I'm going to choose to wrap around the object shape. Okay, you can automatically see that it changed. I'm going to choose wrap to the right side because I don't have anything on the left side. And then the contour options, I want for it to detect the edges. And notice when I did this, it wrapped in around the edges of the flower. Okay, so it conformed to the shape of it, if you will. Now, they're going to have us put in for the top offset, it's going to be 0.125. Okay, now if you want to slide the image up, I'm just using my arrow keys. Okay, you can do that if you want to. Okay, so you can just use your mouse and drag it up and over, or you can use your arrow keys. It's entirely up to you. Okay, see how cool that is? All right. Transforming the shape of frames, there's just a couple of things I wanted to highlight from this section of the text. Compound paths. Okay, compound paths combine two or more paths into one object. You can change the shape of an object of an existing frame by adding other shapes to or subtracting other shapes from its area. You can change the shape of an existing frame even if the frame already contains text and graphics. And you can even modify a frame by rounding its corners. Okay. Now, transforming and aligning objects, and this is where you're going to be doing a lot of that work from. Okay, is going to be on this page right here. We're going to get these into, you're going to be dragging them into position and then lining them up. But before you do that, we need a copy of them because pretty much we're going to use one of each and line them up perfectly here and rotate. You can rotate, scale, shear, and flip objects via, and there's three ways, the transform, the control, and the properties panels. You can also align or distribute objects horizontally or vertically along, and you can do it by selection, margin, page, or spread. And the very last thing that I want to cover in the lesson that I wanted to show you hands-on is drawing lines and modifying arrows. You can use the line tool, and the line tool is this one right here. Okay, it's funny because the line tool looks like this, but the keyboard shortcut is like the backslash. Going to come back up here, and this is going to be done right up here on page 4. I'm going to show you how to put the arrow in. It's super easy. Okay, grab your line tool. I'm going to click with my left mouse button, and I'm just going to hold my shift button down, and that's going to constrain that to a straight line for me. Okay, I'm all about that. And now I'm going to use my stroke panel, and they're going to have us to do a 2-point, and they're going to do, the start end is going to be a square solid, and a barbed is going to be the end, and the scale factor on this end is going to be 75%, and the start end is actually going to be 200%. Okay, now you can try this from the swatches panel, but I'm just going to do it from right up here in my control panel. We don't want to have a fill, so we need to change the fill to none. If you're doing it over here, just make sure that the fill is first and change it to none, and then you can do the stroke. Okay, and then here, they're going to have us change this to the red dark. And I'm going to deselect so you can see what that looks like. And then, of course, you'll finish this section in the text. So I am going to Control S very quickly and then fit this spread in a window. Okay, so yes, I do know that I did not work, well, I probably worked at least half of the chapter, but I'm going to allow you guys the opportunity to read and work the remaining steps that I did not cover. So if we take a look at page per page, okay, so we'll kind of match these up real quickly before I end the video. Excuse me. Here is what I've done for you guys so far. Okay, so if we just take a look at page 4, you guys will resize and put the metadata in. And then you're going to end up putting text inside here. Okay, and I think there's even some formatting you're going to do because these are really small compared to what? No, mine are small. I guess you don't. I think it's just the text you're going to put in. And then there's an image that you're going to put in over here that's already provided for you. Over here, I think the only thing you're going to do is put the same image in over here and then move Urban Oasis Garden and Spring 2024. And then if we take a look here at what you have, okay, basically, yeah, you're going to put your white background in, and there's going to be an object that you're going to repeat and put in a line and round those edges. So you'll get to work with those rounded edges. You can see those here. In previous editions, they just used to be like a color-filled shape. So now they got fancy. And it looks like they, I don't know, it kind of looks like a flower to me. And then over here, it's just like I had mentioned earlier, we're aligning, and we are going to align and rotate. And then our path that we have over here is going to be typed on. And it says partial class calendar, April to August 2024. And then that same logo that we used on pages 4 and 1 will be brought down here as well. Okay, so don't hesitate at all to open your end file and match it to what your work is as you're working along. I think the screenshots in this lesson are a lot better, in my opinion, than the previous lesson. When you open up to the lesson on working with objects, they give you a really great screenshot of at least pages 4 and 1. So you'll be able to see that. And then as you're moving along, I'm just flipping through my book, you guys. Remember, exploring on your own is not, you don't have to do that. I'm trying to see if they provide a screenshot at the ends, but I don't think they do. No, they don't. So they just have you doing the finishing up after you're drawing your lines and putting your arrowhead in. So yeah, you'll probably want to make sure that you have your end file open so that you can just kind of match your pages for those 4 pages and make sure that you've included everything and that you're not, leaving any points on the table whenever you're finished. All right, you guys. So that wraps up the lecture portion of working with objects. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate, just let me know.